Right, hey everyone, I'm Klloo. So, Armory deck Boltyn, right? Let's take a look because we've got all the juicy details. So, Boltyn is the next hero up, coming out shortly, right? July 12th. So that is next week, right? It features new card design in addition to many of the foundational cards used in tournament wing decks of the featured hero. Now that is a little bit problematic, right? And we'll get into that as we look through the deck. But if we look at, tournament wing decks, we see a lot of, main sake staples that are disruptive to play, right? Arsenal disruption, or, overall a bit more aggressive or more defensive, especially in light, right? So Sink Below is a good example where Soul Food sort of overshadows that because it furthers the game, right? Goes into your soul, it becomes a resource for a light hero, and it has, to some extent, better block capacity than Sink Below. So, although the deck features some very good cards, right, especially some interesting new design for equipment, what it lacks is anything to really make it competitive, which is, again, a problem that the Armory decks seem to be having, right? They are fundamentally well-rounded decks. They are fundamentally easy to play, and this deck looks extremely easy to play, but it does lack a lot of the crucial, impactful cards when it comes to trying to disrupt or impede your opponent in an effective way to then make your deck just that little bit more competitive, more strategic, more tactical. So in the case of KO, right, we did not get Command & Conquer, but what we got was some well-rounded choices to supplement Command & Conquer. Now, in the case of Boltyn, we have new equipment, and then we have only a few new cards, with Saving Grace probably trying to be the most impactful, and as an additional cost to play this, you may charge your hero's soul. If you charge this turn, tie attack gets -2. So it's kind of like a 0 for 5, right? It does have a very useful effect, right? And you can use it in that sense for just a normal block, or again, you can make it a bit more impactful by actually going a little below value, right? Because this is where it becomes a bit questionable. So charging your soul is basically using up a card, right? We're in a yellow-red deck, so if you hit a yellow card, you're losing 2 pitch from your next turn. If you hit a red card, you're losing 1 pitch from your next turn. As opposed to something like a movable or some other defense reaction that comes to mind that has a heavier cost associated to it, well, then the value is a little bit more questionable, right? Because again, it's 3 block and a -2. In some matchups, -2 is perfect. In some matchups, it's not enough, or it might be even overboard, right? So it is nice and flexible. It is still a great card, but overall, I think this deck lacks a lot of impact to actually make it competitive. It just seems like a borderline aggressive deck that, again, has been strung together really nicely. Like, the cards look and seem like they really flow into one another. They make full use of Boltyn's attack reaction effect to banish cards from your soul, to give any sort of buffed card go again, right? That is really impactful. If you combine it in conjunction with one another, chances are you probably will be able to get this off, on cards like Snatch or any of the attack actions you're going with in this deck. But across the board, again, I do think it lacks some of those tournament cards that, again, it mentions, and that is a bit of a problem, right? It does not have Bolting Blade, which is, Boltyn's kind of finisher, right? His high value card that you're building up to have a big amount of tempo build, right? It lacks that, right? It lacks some of the heavy costs. It has been stripped down to be kind of minimalistic in a sense, right? Where the resources you're paying are going strictly to your charging cost, right? All the cards in this deck are either 0 cost or 1 cost. Again, it's red, yellow, so it's trying to be a really good aggro deck. And again, I don't think the deck itself is problematic. It's just, once again, the level of the decks we're getting aren't really competitive level decks, right? You can grab this, you can take it to an Armory, but you're not gonna, win. You're not going to probably place that highly with this just out the box. It is still something you can pick up and you can play with, but it does miss staples, and it does miss a few cards, which, again, given with KO, we're probably going to get another video explaining the fundamentals of the deck, and that's a wonderful video. But then it's also going to have the next step, the step that I think LSS should be providing in transitioning this from a Armory deck, or a pseudo-Armory deck, to an actual competitive Armory deck. And that in itself is a little bit of a problem. So in terms of Majestics, right, that's the important part to probably start and look at, right? We have Luminar's Ascension, which is just bread and butter for Boltyn, so that's fine. It's perfect until the end of turn. Weapons you control get +1. If they hit, you can put a light card into your soul, you can charge, you can have more use and ability to, again, have that attack reaction. So they pair really nicely. You can get some more swings with Redan, since it does have that secondary effect. If you charge this turn, you may attack an additional time with each weapon you control. I kind of feel like Axe Boltyn would have been set up more nicely with this deck, right? So rather than having Redan have the pair of axes. But, you know, it is what it is. That would probably be the first fundamental change that I would personally make, is I would just strip away Redan and put in the 2 axes, the Axe of Body, Axe of Mind, I think they are. Do either of these decks run it? They run Centauri Sabers, right, which are probably actually another good call. But yeah, altogether, you know, it's a good weapon, right? 0 for 3 is fantastic. Again, the main gimmick of the deck is to charge, but it's not always going to land. So I do think that could have been a nice little change. But other than that, we just have Saving Grace and Luminar's Ascension. We are missing, again, some of those more staple M's, some of the big swings, the big hitting cards, right? Again, Celestial Cataclysm as this big payoff for charging your soul over and over again. A 0 for 7 with Go Again is fantastic. Bolting Blade, again, a well-statted card for Boltyn, right? Because you can get it down to that free cost. And then also, you know, some of the other big payoffs as well, like Beacon of Victory. Again, there's lots of ways to charge your soul, but it seems like all they're really trying to get you to do is learn to set up and use Boltyn's ability itself, rather than going to these further bigger cards. And that's interesting, but I think we probably could have had it, you know, cement the playstyle a bit further rather than be a almost tutorial-esque deck. But deck aside, again, I do think it is a good deck. It's just not a great deck, similar to KO. The equipment, however, this is the interesting part. So we have a full set of M's, right? We have the Helm of Halo's Grace, Solar Plexus, which is the standout card to me, Braces of Belena's Grace, and the Warpath of Winged Grace. So, Helm of Halo's Grace. The best way to look at that is to compare it to the Warband, right? So, action, pay 2, destroy this. Next time you attack this turn, you may charge your hero's soul. If a yellow card is charged this way, draw a card, go again. So it has tempo, it has a good amount of block, and it has the ability to essentially pay for itself, because either you're covering the charge cost by drawing another card, or you're covering the resource cost. So that is nice. Compare that to the Helm of Halo's Grace. When this defends, you may charge your hero's soul. If a yellow card is charged this way, draw a card, so it's good. You still restock your hand. You don't have to pay anything. It's a one-time use, right? Similar to Warband, but you don't have the benefit of, you know, being able to block twice with it and then use its effect. So it does lack a little bit of the defense capability of that. So it is just a budget version. The nice thing is, again, it sets up for your next turn, right? You have that card in your soul going to your next turn. But in saying that, with all these defend cards, you lack the upfront ability to charge, making your deck more reliant on having cards that you play have that charge requirement, have that charge cost. And some of them are good, right? There's definitely better ones, like Take Flight. I'm curious they didn't squeeze in the blue Take Flight. I think they really want to hit the yellow cards, or just have really, you know, well-statted cards to play. But yeah, altogether, it's just a budget version. The Braces, right, is a bit more subjective, because there's not any prime example. Gallantry Gold seems to be what everyone is running, right? This builds a Courage token, so it's somewhat similar. Again, in axes or dual weapons, Gallantry is just significantly better, especially when you're swinging over and over again. But this has, when you defend, you may charge your hero's soul. If a yellow card is charged this way, create a Courage token. So the big way you're meant to pay off with this equipment is you go into your opponent's turn, you use one, you charge, and then you have that card set up for your turn to make use of Boltyn's, again, attack reaction. The problem is, again, if you have charged this turn, which is that main requirement, which is also kind of an activator for the attack reaction step, you don't get that anymore, right? Because you're charging your soul on your opponent's turn, not on your turn. So, again, it's nice, it's questionable. Again, I would probably swap to the axes or to Centauri Sabers, and therefore also swap the gloves straight away. Warpath of Winged Grace. When this defends, you may charge your hero's soul. If yellow charged, you may create a Quicken token. So that one is a lot nicer, because a Quicken token goes a little bit further, right? It is basically covering both aspects of Boltyn's effects. It just enables Go Again. So the boots are definitely stand out compared to what's normally run, right, which is more weapon focused. I do think a Quicken token is a little bit better overall, so I do like the boots. And then we get to Solar Plexus, which is a fantastic card, but I do think is a better Prism card. So instant, destroy this, banish a card from your soul. Yellow cards cost 1 less to play this turn. That is huge because yellow, for one, again, going back to Prism, so many of the heralds are very well statted in yellow. I mean, altogether, again, yellow is the crux of light, right? That's the main cards they're trying to build around, so that's fine. But again, overall, I do think it sits a little bit better in Prism for a couple of reasons. One, again, Boltyn is sort of this much cheaper to run deck. Making these cards free is definitely fantastic, don't get me wrong. But again, a lot of your cost requirement goes towards the charge capacity, whereas with Prism, you attack, and then that leads to you putting the cards in your soul. You're not charging up front, it's a result of what you're actually doing. So having a way to discount for a whole turn is fantastic. But nonetheless, it does enable a lot of great tempo turns in this deck, but can definitely be utilized a lot better later on, right? When again, we start tweaking the deck and we start putting other cards in. Because the big thing for me, when it comes to making yellow cards cost less, well, the majority of draw is slotted in yellow, right? Art of War being free is phenomenal, right? We love it in Zen because of 12 Petal and making it free in a sense, because we generate that extra resource when we get cheap. But yeah, so Art of War being free means you can cycle it and another card and also gain a powerful effect. That is fantastic. Cash In being a 3 for draw 2, it's just straight up 2 cycle, right? That's good in itself. Tome, phenomenal. Again, it becomes a 0 cost draw 2, throw and lead the charge, and now it's a 2 card cycle, right? So we have lots of ways to cycle through our deck, which leads us to OTKs. And I love OTKs, and Boltyn is definitely poised to have probably the best OTK because there is a phenomenal amount of draw, and it's not just straight up draw, it is, in a sense, cycling. But, Tome of Divinity. So, draw 2 cards. If a card's been put into your hero's soul this turn, instead draw 3. So if that is 3 cost because of the -1 from the chess piece, it means you are now benefiting a card if you were to pitch blue, right? So Tome of Divinity can be a +1. Tome of Farendale with Mage Master Boots can be a +1 at a much cheaper cost than everyone else. You also have cards like Prayer of Belna, which is reveal the top card of your deck. If it's yellow, put it into your hand, then charge your hero's soul. So it's basically a draw 1, right? Plus the +2. This is a fantastic card, and I kind of wish this featured in the deck, because this is really something that would work superbly well with what the deck is going for, right? Again, on that turn where you use the chess piece, it's now 0 cost, buff your next attack, and potentially draw and charge, right? And that is just phenomenal. +3 block, go again. It's a wonderful card. I think that being slotted into the deck would probably have been the highlight to me, right? That singular extra Majestic. And I don't think it is an expensive Majestic, but yeah, building Boltyn for an OTK seems a lot more viable now with that chess piece. Again, it's comparable to Savage Sash in a sense. I feel it's a little bit more impactful because just making every yellow card 1 cheaper is insane. And again, going back to Prism, we have all the different heralds. I mean, the Herald of Erudition turn was already disgusting enough. Imagine now having everything be 1 cost cheaper, right? That's insane. So it hits, it has Dominate, it's already decent damage. You draw 2 cards, goes into your soul, and you just continue playing with this 1 minus cost, right? So I do think altogether, whether you want to play Boltyn or you're a Prism fan, this is the card to get, right? This is just phenomenal for light. I think what they're doing in terms of the Tunic being, again, this really aggro tempo one-off effect is phenomenal, right? Because it can be that pinnacle point where you get way ahead or you come back from behind, and that is fantastic. It is a great alternative to Tunic. Obviously, Tunic still outvalues over the course of the game, but is definitely a lovely design choice to see. So again, overall, the deck is fine, but once again, not fantastic, right? And that's a problem for a deck to be competitive in Fab. It has to be borderline fantastic. It's just missing some of those crucial aspects when it comes to, again, impeding or disrupting your opponent's plays. It's just aggressive. It's well thought out. It strings everything together nicely, which is phenomenal, but it is, again, lacking some of those crucial cards, and it's a bit soft on Majestics, similar to KO, right? On those crucial Majestics, it doesn't have to be the big cards. It can just be, some of the unsung heroes that, again, I mean, how much is Prayer? Prayer is currently a $1 card, right? So this could have easily been slotted in there. Again, works well with that swing turn. It works well with what the deck's trying to do. It is mainly a yellow deck, so chances are this is going to hit most of the time. If not, it's still, cycle a card, it's still draw a card, still get the +2. So yeah, that's the shame to me, right? That they're, for whatever reason, trying to make sure that these Majestics that they are creating have value to them. And I think that's a horrible idea to carry, because again, they're new cards. They don't have to have a pre-existing value, right? You can attribute more value to the deck and still preserve the value of cards and have these just be whatever they are. I mean, Savage Slash has come down. This will spike. This will definitely be a key player in a lot of decks going forward, but then it will drop, right? As there's enough in supply, as people realize it's not that hard to get a hold of. So I do wish, again, sideboard, definitely, but overall, the quality of cards was a little bit greater. Nonetheless, it's an interesting deck. It definitely seems to make Boltyn a lot less confusing, a lot less easier, a lot more introductory friendly, because I think that's one of the big hurdles with Boltyn is he is a little bit complex. So this is a great starting step, but you do need to take it then further to actually make it competitive for yourself. I don't think this is a overly competitive deck as it is. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. See ya.